Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. Going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of April 7th through 13th. A pretty significant week in a pretty significant time for the zeitgeist, right? There are a lot of things flying around. And this week, two of the planets that have been causing a lot or helping cause a lot of this trouble the last few weeks are going to go direct. Mercury is going to go direct on Monday. Venus is going to go direct next Saturday. We also have a very intense full moon in Libra next Saturday. So those are the main things I'm going to talk about this week. A little bit of business first. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog I do every week on YouTube. If you have a YouTube account and you like what you see, I really would like you to become a follower. And if you become a follower, you need to turn on your notifications so that you know when the blog is posted or when I post other blogs. In case you missed it, I did post a blog on the quarterly for the US based on the equinox chart last week, and very telling of exactly what we're going through. I mean, guys, all I can say is I told you so. I've been telling you so for several months now that we were going to reach this point. But also, I want you to know the podcast is still available on podcasts too. It was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel. So just go out there, look up Astrological Winds channel on your podcast. You should be able to find it out there. It's been picking up more and more followers on that too. It's also available on Instagram. If you have an Instagram account, you can become a follower of Astrological Winds channel there. It'll show up on your newsreel, the link, and then you can always find it on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. Please check the website out, not only for that, but for my weekly calendar on Earth days and events, and also has all my professional services listed, menu items, new things going on for people who really want to work closely, looking for students too, beginners, and also any group that you're looking for a workshop, lecture, class, all that stuff. Look at the website. Now, remember, it is a free service that I'm offering here. So what I do ask is that everybody pass the link along to someone when they're done. If you've done it before, please do it again. It's my favorite way really to get the blog done. I passed along and finding the right people. I feel it's really authentic that way. So I really appreciate it when you guys do that. And remember, if you don't know astrology well, don't get caught up on the terms and lose the meaning of what that is that I'm trying to tell you in between. Because the important thing is that you know what the energy is that you're working with this week. And that way you can, hopefully be more in harmony with that. Remember, your own chart has its own energy going on too. So this is not just a pure thing. And that's why you need help from a professional astrologer at times, right? So anyway, let's get into this. So it's quite a week, and yes, people have been saying it over and over, and I warned you guys for literally months. I've been warning people since last fall that the energy between December and now would be really tough. That it would really hit some low points this spring, in particular in the last 2 weeks of March going into April, and that's exactly what we've got. A lot of it, obviously it's hard to say, obviously a lot of it being caused by the decisions made by particularly one man in the United States, and so that it's caused a lot of distress in the world, and the timing for what he did is perfect, as far as astrology is concerned. He followed all these patterns of, doing this stuff, and, has helped bring the world to that brink. But everybody's following that too. We're not victims. We're willingly going along here. We're allowing this all to occur. All of us, are in it together. We're a collective, So this week the energy is going to be pretty hard still. I'm not, going to lie to you guys. When planets change directions, I've said this many times, it doesn't mean like, oh, the retrograde period's over, thank God. No, actually, that's the third and final exact hit of the period when the events can really cluster around those exact hits and get really, really manifesting of the energy of the retrograde. So just because these two planets are going direct this week does not mean that they're going to be functioning like they normally do, and they will not be for quite a bit yet. So, but let's there's something else going on Monday before I want to get into the Mercury retrograde, though. And Venus is actually doing its annual conjunction to Saturn. Now, if you were watching the blog last week, or if you watched the annual blog, the biggest outer planet transit this year is Saturn sextile Uranus, right? And I talked about it in a lot last week and in the annual blog. So go back to that. But the point is, Venus retrograde is right on this now, right? Venus is actually conjunct Saturn and sextile Uranus. So it's keeping it very, very potent this week, and this is going to really give us an opportunity to be very realistic about our relationships, to really discern which ones we want still in our life, which ones are going to give us the opportunities to be more creative, to be more supportive of ourselves, to be who we really are, instead of being restricted by others or by circumstances that others can bring to us. So we can give ourselves a very sober assessment of relationships. And this is all this week, even though the exact conjunction is on Monday, since Venus is turning direct from retrograde on Saturday, it's staying like right on top of each other, not only all this week, but all next week. So we're going to have 2 weeks where we can really use this energy to really assess all those relationships, and really, decide which ones do we need to pull back from, which ones are we investing too much of our emotional bank account into and not getting any return on, right? And being like, okay, maybe it's time to keep this one, not in that category of the emotional intimacy, or maybe it's complete separation even, or maybe it has to be redefined. And this is another great way to use this energy, is to have heart-to-heart talks with people that you are having issues with, to really lay it out on the floor and let them know, this is how you're feeling, and let them know, and let them have the ability to actually respond to that. And you may both decide, yeah, it's time for a break. It's time to redo this relationship from another place, from another ground floor. Now, Venus Saturn, what does that mean? It means the next 2 weeks are still going to suck financially, at least, right? Restrictions on finances, restrictions on investment, shrinkage, right? Being led by institutions, Saturn, who are reacting emotionally to what is going on by the administration of the United States and the things that are going on. So I can tell you right now, yes, this is going to be a time where you need to continue to be frugal with your resources and be skillful with your resources. And this may go on for a long time, you guys. This is not the time to be self-indulging, right? And the other thing about the Venus Saturn, romantic relationships too, are going to be like, there's going to be probably serious reality checks in relation to your romantic relationships, and how much emotional intimacy you can give and get in them. This energy is a conjunction. So it's good for starting relationships, but it's good for starting relationships that are more non-emotional, more non-intimate, like business relationships, for instance. It favors things like that. It favors like getting consultations from people who are more experienced, who have, more wisdom and might be able to help you that way. And part of that too is then the sextile to Uranus starts pulling in, because when you start to like assess these relationships and know what your duties are and what they are not, and start to maybe back away from some or even separate from some or reassess them or put them in a certain favor, this starts to give you more freedom actually to be more self-responsible for yourself and to be able to express your uniqueness, your talents, right? Break into new territory with new people. Venus sextile Uranus shows that we can, once we release some of these older relationships and old relationship patterns, then we allow new energy to open up and new people can come in or new ways to connect and align yourselves with the people that you have, So this, and a lot of times this can be people who are very different than we are with Uranus, So looking for someone who's very, very different, and even, you're looking for people too who are supporting that creative uniqueness in you, the new part where you're like wanting to go out and push that kind of energy. So very, very interesting. And like I said, this is not only going on Monday, it is really tight all week and will be tight all next week too. So this is really, a great way to use this last part. And what is Venus retrograde about anyway? It's about reassessing relationships. So this can really give us a very sober way of really looking at that. I really think it's an excellent time. And, and the Venus in Pisces is even saying, who reaches my ideal? Who disheartens me? Who disappoints me? These are ways you can feel it out. Why am I making an emotional investment in people who are going to disappoint me? Why, be real with yourself about this stuff. Don't, like I said, don't set yourself up for victimhood, because you can't be a victim unless you're willing to be one. And so that's also the day Mercury goes direct. It's at 27 degrees Pisces. And like I already mentioned, when these planets station and they're standing still, that's when some of the most intense energy of the retrograde can do. And here's Mercury in Pisces too, the weakest sign it can be in, right? And what I'm thinking is this is just like complete confusion to the intellect and the mind as to what to do right now because of real world situations. This is the hangover of the whole retrograde period and some of the decisions that were made when Mercury was in Aries, when Mars has been in Cancer, where like all of a sudden it's all coming back and it's like, wow, like reality is collapsing around me as I know it. That seems to be happening in the world. So it can be very, very confusing energy. It's like, what is going on? And so Mercury is going to be in Pisces until the 17th of the month when it goes back into Aries, which is still not another sign that it's strong in. But at least it starts to get an idea about what a way it wants to move forward at that point. Now, it will be in shadow until the end of the month. So we are definitely not anywhere near out of the woods yet with the energy of this Mercury retrograde and the things that have happened in the last few months. And Mercury is just in Pisces is just really not sure what to do. I mean, like it's like, the answers that it normally has, the intellectual answers to problems, the methods and procedures that Mercury normally uses is not working right now. And so our ideals, Mercury and Pisces, our ideals may be shattered. Our communications and our thoughts may be disheartening, confusing. And the normal things that Mercury rules, like business, look at how out of whack that is. The stock market lost how many points last week? 5,000 points or something like that. That's, going into bear market territory, no doubt. So it's going to take until like halfway through the month to even start to get some clarity in thinking what we need to do. And then even then, when we go into it goes into Aries, we may, once again, we're still going to be in shadow and we still may overreact to a lot of things that are going on. So I have to be really careful about all that stuff. Now on Tuesday, I just want to mention one little thing before I get to Saturday, which is the other big day. Tuesday, Mars does trine the North Node for the third time in the Mars retrograde cycle. Remember, Mars is still in its shadow of retrograde too until it hits 5 degrees of Leo, which will be pretty soon, but it still has. So this is the third hit of Mars trying the North Node. And it's like, this is where we're looking for some cooperation. We're looking for some kind of team effort with others for some kind of goal or objective we have. And it can be in a good flow. And a lot of times this can have to do with social goals. Like, this is the type of thing where people can be pulled together under one goal or objective, and they can have a shared success with that. And even on an individual level too, it can go back a little bit to this Venus Uranus. This can be a time where a significant relationship can start up, where you can work very strongly and actively with someone who has the same purpose or goal as you. So that's some really interesting energy to tap into possibly this week. And then we go to Saturday and we have this. And when you ever see this, this in a circle, this is what we call a T square. So there's our moon, full moon in Libra, opposite the sun. Moon's always opposite the sun, right? When it's a full moon, that's what a full moon is, right? The sun in Aries, which is tightly conjunct Chiron. So the moon is opposite Chiron, the sun is conjunct Chiron. And they're both squaring the very weak Mars in fall in Cancer at 27 degrees. So this is what we call a cardinal T square. And T squares are a grand aspect pattern of great tension. That's why it's in red. It's going to get your attention here. There's going to be a lot of issues going on. When you see a T square, there's issues going on that we have to react to. That it's just, there's so much tension in it, and so this moon in Libra, full moon in Libra, is actually ruled by the Venus that's going direct literally on the same day and is still conjunct Saturn and sextile Uranus. So we've got quite a bit of energy loaded into this full moon, and it's very reflective of what's going on right now in the world and the great changes that are being initiated, Sun in Aries, and the tense energy that's bringing, the opposition, especially to people, which is the moon. The moon is one of the things that the moon represents in astrology, or the people, or the general public. So this is, and then you can see this really tight conjunction to Chiron is really a big part of this equation too, because when it's with Aries, it's like wanting to take initiative on new goals, wanting to like push that stuff right down the throats of others, and it's completely insensitive to the effects of that. And who gets that? The moon opposite Chiron. It's like, oh my God, I've got to react to this. I've got to respond to this. This is just being pushed right down my throat. So what's this full moon all about? First of all, the moon's in Libra. The moon in Libra is very graceful. It's very sociable. It's very gracious. It's very harmonious. It wants beauty in relationships. It wants beauty all around it in its environment, right? And here it is, and it wants peace too. The moon in Libra wants peace, but it wants that peace to be in a form of equality and justice for all, where people are not being left behind, right? And so there's the great tension that's coming in with the sun in Aries, because the sun in Aries is very individualistic. It is the opposite of Libra and the sensitivity towards relationships. It is completely insensitive to relationships, to the point where it's almost, I think sometimes Aries is actually literally ignorant about the energy it puts out towards relationships. It literally does not realize the effect that it has on others when it's hell bent on making the decisions that it wants to make. So, this can be energy that, it can be very hard for the moon in Libra to come into agreement with. And what does the moon in Libra do when it doesn't get peace through agreement, through diplomacy, through negotiation? It will go to war. Moon in Libra will go to war if it's backed into the corner, if it's feeling like things are so unjust and so unfair. And what's going on right now in the United States this weekend, there were like over 1,000 protests going on against what people were perceiving was unfair about being pushed down on them. So like, that's, Aries energy is very coercive, and Libra is very sensitive and Aries is insensitive. So this can get that Libra moon very irked and get it backed into a corner like a badger. And let me tell you, when Libra comes out fighting, they're very effective warriors, actually. Some of the greatest generals in history were Libras because they know they're fighting for the right thing. As far as they're concerned, they know they're fighting for the right thing. But remember, this Aries energy is very insensitive, so you can see how this is playing out in the United States right now. You can see this is the administration pushing certain policies that are hurting people, and they're based on fear of not having enough, fear of nationalism, fear of people feeling insecure with resources, all that kind of stuff is really, really, pushing that energy and that fear. So like I said, there are a lot of new innovative goals that this Aries is coming up with, but it really hasn't thought it out about how it's going to ruffle the feathers of this when it's breaking into that new territory. It can really upset the peace in people's lives and really really push things out, and that Libra moon, like I said, it really wants things peaceful and harmonious. um so it is, so what's happening here, then Mars gets involved too, and this just ratchets up the anger and the irritation and all of that. It is this Mars in Cancer is driven, I've said this over and over since December, it is driven by fear. It is driven by the emotions of how it's feeling, and when it's in Cancer, many times it's feeling fearful about not having enough, about not having the resources it needs to take care of itself or to take care of its loved ones. So there's a lot of posturing and defensive reactionary behavior that comes out of a Mars in Cancer. And then when it's squaring back to the sun, boy, that just pushes the flames up in the individuals. We know how people act out during full moons, right? Well, when you get Mars involved, the individual lone wolf acting out energy under this full moon is just going to be wild. And remember, once again, this is going to really push up the energy of man-made and natural disasters around this time too. Look at your chart where 24 degrees Libra is and 24 degrees Aries, and that's going to show you the axis or the two houses that you're going to really be feeling this energy in, and you got to be careful because you're going to be feeling really defensive about certain things, and we can get very angry and irritated with others and lose our temper and go off on them. And it's really good to do something physical with this energy, but once again, we can be very impulsive under this energy and end up hurting ourselves. So we have to be very, very measured in this energy, that we're all going to be feeling this fear of not having enough, and it's going to get us very angry at anyone we perceive who's bringing us to that energy, and we're going to want to protect ourselves, and this can be very aggressive energy that can come out. It can be very disturbing, very, very pushing, very unconscious of the actions that we're taking because we're reacting. We're reacting to emotional stuff not being met, and it's easy to see the weaknesses in other people's stuff right now too and attack them. So there's a lot of insensitivity that can go on. There's a lot of energy that's wrapped up in this full moon, and let's hope people can act very, very angry. This literally, if there was a word to be put on this, it's belligerent, literally. And we have to be careful about no matter what side we're on, no matter what we believe in, no matter whether this is playing out in our individual relationships or in our communities or in our way we're feeling about society right now, we can all become very belligerent under this energy, blind to anything but our own subjective needs, reacting emotionally without the intellect being involved to discipline it whatsoever. Very super reactionary. There can be great blowups of conflicts in this world. If you have any smoldering conflicts with you, with other people, they're likely to explode during this time. I mean, hostile reactions. That's another good way to describe this energy. Just like, anybody who we perceive that are holding us back, we're going to have this hostile reaction to. And we have to be very careful because impulsive actions many times end up coming back to bite us and hurt us, and very quickly, too. You know, very, very quickly, So we have to be very, very careful about the amount of defensive posturing that we do. Now, when you look at a T-square, there's what we call an open end out here, right? And it's the opposite side of the zodiac sign here. And that means that sometimes we can find an answer for all this tension, to release some of it on the open end of the T-square. So that is Capricorn. And Capricorn represents wisdom, especially in times of frugality. Capricorn's a winter barren sign. It knows how to get through hard times. It knows that it needs to go and find experienced other people who have wisdom on how to get through those times. So there's part of our answer right there, is looking back at how we've gotten through hard times before, the wisdom that we gain from that. And if we don't have that, then to seek out others who do, to maybe seek out our elders or those who are more experienced than us. Now, the other thing to remember is Venus is the ruler of this full moon. And remember what I already said about what's Venus doing this week: conjunct Saturn, sextile Uranus. So what I think is this full moon with the Venus is going to really help us shine a light on those relationships and do exactly what I said. Assess the ones that are good for us and get rid of the ones that are causing a lot of this stress in our lives, right? And so this is a very good energy to look at that and try to come up with some agreements with people. And if you can, then it's your opportunity to move forward, to do something for yourself that helps release your creativity, that brings you into new areas, gives you the opportunity to have more freedom in your life, to be who you are. In general, this full moon is saying that there's great, great changes going on, and it is a highly tense time that everybody is going to feel it and be hurt by it and emotionally react to it. But it can also give us a very sober viewpoint of life and the reality of life, and especially in our relationships. And perhaps it will then give us the opportunities to start moving forward into new terrain with new people, and especially with Venus going direct on that same day at 25 degrees Pisces. Venus will re-enter Aries, where it went initially retrograde, a very weak sign, once again, because Aries energy, not paying attention to what other people's, the effects you have on other people. And that's why Venus is really weak there. And it's going to show that this economic downturn is going to continue for probably quite a while still. So once again, any issues that you're having in relationships or with money or your own creativity, this is a very sensitive point now where you can feel like, wow, this is a low point on that energy. But as the month goes on and Venus starts to move forward again, we'll start to slowly feel this energy release. Now, while Venus is still in Pisces, which is the rest of this month, that is really a good time to look at your relationships and be like, does this meet my ideals or is it disheartening to my ideals? And that can be a way to help you discern which relationships are supportive and which are not. But I would definitely expect the economy to continue to struggle through this whole period. So be careful with your finances. And once Venus goes back into Aries, we're going to get a lot of reacting again. We're going to get a lot of people up on their soapboxes beating their chests. I'm right and everybody else is wrong, and no one can hear anybody else talking because everyone's talking and screaming at the same time. It's going to be really difficult to get along with others still. So there's a lot of debris over the next 2 months that still needs to be swept out from all this stuff that goes all the way back to early December when Mars went retrograde. I've been saying it now for several months, guys. This is like, really a low point. It really is for the world. And change is being forced on all of us. And it's gonna hurt all of us. There's going to be pain involved in all of this. And the solutions are not easily found right now. And if we continue to allow ourselves to fall, like I said, into states of victimhood or just being a follower, not being sober and real about our relationships and things like that, then this can be a very, very difficult time, as it is for many people and as it is for the world right now. So this energy is going to continue. But once these planets all start going direct, we can start to feel some of the backwards energy start to dissipate. But going all back into Aries, there's going to be a lot of blowback too. There's going to be a lot of angry blowback as these things go direct. And Mars will be going into Leo too. So there's going to be a lot of blowback stuff still going on for a month or two, you guys. And like I said, in even the quarterly report, things just don't look good for the United States and for the economy of the world and things like that right now. If we give our power away, you know, we all we can do is react to that at this point. So we have to be really clear once again. Who are we giving power away to? Who do we want to take it back from so that we can create new opportunities for ourselves? All right, you guys, that's what I got for this week. Next week, I actually didn't really look too much at next week yet. Okay, let's see, what do we got? So Mercury is going to head back into Aries. I did mention that next week. And then, of course, it's going to hit Neptune right away. And then Mars is going to finally go back into Leo. So it's almost at the end of its shadow period. And then also next week is when the sun goes into Taurus. So we're going to actually have 3 planets change signs next week. And then and that means they'll all hit that early degree Aries Neptune right away. So yeah, another very active week next week. So check in with that. All right, you guys, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds Channel. You are going to pass that link on right now. Now I'm going to do an infomercial. If you need a reading, I'd really like to do that for you. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. I was trained for 7 years. I went to school, did independent exams. I've been doing consultations for that long. I would love to do your chart or someone else that you know who's looking to have chart work done. Having a chart done by a professional astrologer is not the same as getting a computer printout. It's not the same as reading a book and trying to figure it out yourself, or having a friend who knows a little bit about astrology give you something. This chart is with you your whole life. You go through cars, you go through clothes, you spend all your money on all these kinds of things that are kind of come and go. This thing's with you your whole life. Invest in yourself. Make sure you know what your chart is because it's with you. And if you're just not aware of the energy, then you're just being pushed around by it. An astrological reading by a professional is going to give you an awareness of the energy so that you can start to learn to control your energy better, make better decisions for yourself, be more self-fulfilled. I do all kinds of readings, not only natal readings, I do predictive readings for a year, for a month, for a week, for a day. If you're a professional that needs to me to work with you day to day or week to week or month to month, or if you're someone that's going through a really hard time, I have those kind of services available too. I also do children's charts, relationship charts, election charts for the best timing of doing things, horary questions, fixed star readings for deeper soul purpose. I also have classes available on podcasts for beginners. I'm also trying to get a live beginners class going. If you have an interest in that, please contact me. My contact is matthue823 or go to the website www.astrologicalwinds.com and hit me on there. There's contact there too. If you are a group, you're looking for a lecture or a workshop, some kind of class, or even mini readings at an event, I am available for all that stuff too. So please get in touch. There is the website and the address one more time. Thank you for all your support. If anybody wants to give a monetary donation, a currency donation to the blog, which does cost me a little money to put out, my Cash App is $Matthew with two T's, Lawton, Lauten, all one word. Venmo at Matthew, hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten. No amount is too small, you guys. Even $5 helps out. I appreciate all of you. I know it's a hard time. If you're having a hard time, come. Let's do a predictive reading. We can take a look at your stuff. If you haven't done a natal chart yet, let's get that done first. All right. I will see you all next week when we got 3 planets changing signs. Another big week ahead. See y'all then.